The sun. Turn to face the sun and trust that you know how to find your own way home. And fly.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to this episode of Stories of Transformation, brought to you by iamtheguru. I'm here today with a special guest, Angela Blueskies. And Angela is, I'm so happy to have you with us today, Angela, by the way.
Thank you
again for agreeing to do the interview. So Angela is a sacred musician. She does sound medicine journeys and is a healing and transformation facilitator. She works out of her mountain sanctuary, does ancestral healing, and is currently living in West Virginia. And how I know Angela is we have a common connection, of course, to Pisac and the Sacred Valley. Many shared beautiful friends and family, soul family living there. So it's really such an honor to have you here with us today, Angela, and to be part of this project that I've taken on to share these really inspiring stories of people who've found their inner truth, their inner knowing, followed their heart, and are really creating a life on purpose. And like you were just saying a moment ago, like really outside of the box, outside of what maybe our belief systems or our upbringing has told us life should look like, or who we should be, or what we should do with our lives, and really going within and saying, does that work for me or doesn't it work? And if it doesn't, how do I want to create my life? And so, yes, so welcome. And I always like to start these interviews with sharing with everybody an understanding of so I like to refer to it as like a shift in consciousness, or like an inner awakening, something pivotal that happened in your life, a point that made you maybe see things differently, or do things differently than you were doing them before in a really significant way. And so I'd love for you to start and share with everybody just what your life was like before you had this happen to you, like what you were doing for work, how did you feel about life? How did you feel about yourself? Those sorts of things would be great to hear about, first of all.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. And I can't thank you enough for inviting me to share some about my experience with the community. It's really such a beautiful thing that you've created here.
Thank you.
For me, the turning point in my journey happened in 2003. And before that time, I was working as a classical musician. I was a classical flutist. I had a full studio of students, mostly young people, some adults also. I was living in a super cool little historic town in Maryland, and was close to a river and nature, and had a really wonderful community around me, and felt really well connected there. I had been living in the greater Baltimore, Washington area since the mid-90s, when I had moved there for college, when I went to music school. And so my life wasn't terrible before. I was already somebody that had followed my heart's passion to be a musician and a performer and a teacher, and to really give other people the opportunity to cultivate their own creative voices as well. And I had the blessing of being able to play concerts and play whatever music I was called to. And I worked alongside of people that I loved, some of whom were my closest friends in life. And so life was already really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I wasn't able to see in myself at that point is that I was bored.
Mm-hmm.
I had become stagnant in my own journey of being creative. And I wasn't really following a path of continued growth and personal evolution, which is something I'd kind of always been called to since I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like you just had a bit of an awareness come to you that I'm a bit not fully fulfilled, or fully, like, I don't know, expressing myself in a really full way in the world. Is that kind of how it was for you, Angela? Or
Yeah, and I didn't really see it until after I had an awakening experience. I remember being in my early 20s, and I was fresh out of music school. I had gone to Peabody Conservatory, which is one of the best music schools in the world,
mm-hmm.
and I had kind of flowed into all of the opportunities that I had, and I felt really grateful for them. But I also remember having a full-time job working for the Baltimore Symphony, not as a musician, but in an office.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, I really considered the two tracks that seemed to be appearing in front of me. And one of them was have a stable job with benefits, doing something close to what it is that I'm doing, and be able to have the personal and financial stability to navigate my life and to have what I needed just easily taken care of, and then be able to do the things I love on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Or the path of knowing that I just need to follow my heart's call every step of the way and figure it out. And if you don't leap, how do you ever know it's possible?
Right, of course.
And even at 22, after having worked in that office job for a few years, I knew that I couldn't keep going down that road. I was miserable, like binge watching TV and drinking alcohol and eating junk food. And I think some part of me in the back of my mind knew that I was numbing myself because I wasn't being true to myself. And I made a commitment at that point, like I have to be true to myself and just figure it out. Otherwise, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm. And where did you go from there then in your journey?
I eventually quit the job, and I just built up my private teaching work, and I had a full music studio of anywhere between 40 and 50 students a week at that point. So I was just teaching and teaching and teaching and teaching and teaching, and loving it, and having meaningful relationships with students and their families, and I loved that. But then as I went deeper into my own spiritual work, it became clear that something wasn't all in alignment.
Mm-hmm. And so what happened from there? And what was it that, was there any specific thing that occurred for you that had you even wake up even more, or have an awareness even more deeper?
Totally.
Uh-huh.
So in 2003, I got an opportunity to travel to Europe to play in a summer festival orchestra, and traveled all over the south of France as the principal flutist in this summer orchestra. And it was awesome, and it was beautiful, and I decided to stay around an extra couple of weeks. And I've always been a mountain girl, so I wanted to go hiking in the mountains, and I was in France and Switzerland, and just really spending some deep time connecting in the best way that I knew at that point with the land and nature. And I came back, and everything in my life looked the same, but I was different somehow, and I couldn't figure out like what was different. But I felt deeply unsettled and kind of angry and frustrated, and a little bit like self-destructive. And I was a little concerned because I'd never felt anything like that before. And years later, after I'd done a lot more like personal inquiry and also study, I realized that being in a completely different culture and a different way of being, and exposed to just new things, it kind of stirred me in a really necessary way. And so maybe about 6 weeks after returning from that trip, I had a spontaneous awakening experience that I had no context for. it was one of those days where I was walking around and everything looked kind of odd. Like the place where I lived, and I would always go walking on Sundays, but things were odd and everything felt symbolic. And I thought, gosh, am I losing my mind? What's happening here?
Right.
And it went on for hours. And I finally came home and had this inner directive. I hadn't had a whole lot of directives at that point. Sit down and meditate right now.
And
Did
you know what meditation was at that point? Had you been doing meditation up until then?
I knew what it was, and I'd been reading about it, but my approach to spirituality and awakening had largely been intellectual. And I had even taken some like day-long workshops in meditation at the local Shambhala center, but it wasn't a practice, and it wasn't anything that I really felt like I had direct experience and understanding about. And so I had a big pile of clothes to go to Goodwill on top of my meditation cushion, which I'd never really used.
Right.
And I said, okay, strange voice coming from wherever it's coming from, I'll move all that stuff. And I sat down and I proceeded to have a mind-blowing experience over the course of several hours that I later learned was a Kundalini awakening. And to this day, I don't know what triggered it. It wasn't something that I was seeking. But it rocked my world. It was like an out-of-body experience, and it introduced me to this larger kind of esoteric anatomy that I had never heard of.
Okay.
And kind of energetic processes that felt really out of control, like hysterical crying and hysterical laughter, and not quite knowing how to navigate, like walking around my house. And it went on for a period of like 4 or 5 hours. And I finally went to bed because it exhausted me. And I woke up the next day, and I couldn't figure out how to type on my keyboard because I couldn't figure out how the English language worked. Like it literally felt like my circuits had been fried.
Right.
And I was brushing my teeth at my sink, and the sink was down by my knees. And I'm like, whoa, what's happening? Am I okay physically? But there was something in me that was lit up and on in a way that I couldn't not trust. I had to trust it. And so this process directed me to sit and meditate at least an hour a day, sometimes 2 hours a day, an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And it wasn't a process that I was using to meditate. It wasn't even a practice. It was literally like daily downloads that lasted for, I'm not kidding, 9 months straight.
Amazing. What kind of things were coming through, Angela?
It was an expansion and an alignment in my chakra system, which I didn't even know what that was at the time. I remember at one point I was driving my car to a student's house, and my heart chakra just spontaneously opened. And I literally thought I was going to drive off the road. Like I thought I knew what it was to feel open-hearted before. And I realized that I had actually no idea what that meant until that day. And when it would spend like a few weeks at a time, sometimes even over a month, in a particular energy center where I would literally just sit and energetic things that I have no language for would be happening. And I lost a lot of friends at that point in my life because they thought I was losing my mind. I tried to explain that to some friends who were not necessarily connected to spiritual things, and they were like, check please.
Yeah.
And then around the 8th month, the energy shifted to my head, and I started having these bizarre headaches that literally felt like my head was being pushed apart from the inside out. Ibuprofen didn't help, like massage didn't help, nothing helped. And if I hadn't had this deep trust in what was happening for me, I would have thought I like had a brain tumor or something. At that point also, like whenever I would be still for any period of time, like focusing in one direction, the out-of-body experience would begin. And I remember once driving in the rain with my best friend, and that triggered this to start. And I was like, oh my God, I can't drive. I have to pull over. Like, and he couldn't drive. He didn't drive. He didn't have a driver's license. So I was like, I guess we're going to sit here for a while until this lands.
Right.
And I remember also once being in a movie theater where this expansion started, and I actually had a panic attack because it was expanding to include all of the feelings and all of the mental chatter of all these people in this theater.
That sounds intense. Yeah.
It was crazy. And I journaled the whole thing and have never read it. I need to do that at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. And then around the 9th month, I got a very, very strong message to go walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain. And I was already aware of it. And I'd already even thought about doing it before, but I was like, never a hiker beyond a day hike. And I'd never been backpacking or camping even. And so it sounded kind of crazy. And it was just like the original message that said, sit down and meditate. And I said, I guess I'm going to Spain. And so that is what happened.
Wow, what an incredible experience. And I mean, I'm sure that the walk in Spain was incredible too. I would love to hear more about that. I've thought about doing that myself. There's something calling to me with that. So, but so I'd love to hear about if anything that came up for you on that excursion as well. But I wanted to ask you about, like, with your Kundalini energy rising and that 9 months that you went through all that intense shifting and experiencing, and like, did you have anybody around you that was supporting you or helping you to navigate what was going on?
Not a lot. I had my dear beloved neighbor, and I call her my soul mama. Her name is Lynn, and she was my neighbor right across the street. And she was the first person I ever met that did like energy work. And I am so grateful that I could literally just go knock on her door and tell her about whatever crazy thing was coming through. And she'd be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But beyond her, not really. And I've actually found that to be true in a lot of things in my life. Like I've been the first person in my circles to dive into a lot of different things or to experience a lot of different things. And so that's kind of familiar to me, like being kind of the bushwhacking through the forest when nobody's been there. And so it wasn't even something that I thought about a lot. Like, wow, this feels really isolating. I wish I had some support. Didn't cross my mind so much. And I spent a lot of time in the bookstore, just reading through. I wouldn't buy all the books because I would have had spent millions of dollars, but I would read little bits of different books. And when I found one by, I think his name is Gopi Krishna, called Kundalini, the Awakening Energy in Man, or something to that effect. I thought, oh my God, this man is talking about exactly what I'm living through. I bought that book.
Right. And it became a Bible probably for a while.
And his experience was much more damaging and intense than mine. And I felt very grateful for my process being less than that. But yeah, it was a solitary journey. And the people outside of my life, my daily life anyway, noticed that I didn't look the same anymore. And like I used to have really straight hair and it went curly. And I went to see my hairstylist, and he was like, what have you been doing? Or who have you been sleeping with? And I was like, no, that's not it, really, trust me. I'm meditating. And he was like,
that's amazing.
And like my eyes got bluer. Nobody ever mentioned like, wow, you have such blue eyes before this happened. And people started to notice. And people in my life would say, I don't know what's happening for you, but I want to be around you more. Just because the energy that was coming through was really positive. And so that was cool. And I would share with the ones that I thought were even a little open, and the ones that weren't, like, I just navigated it by myself.
Did you notice anything shift in terms of your artistic ability, like with your music, or mostly with your music, because that was the biggest part of your life, right? As far as that point.
At that point, no. It took quite some more time before that started to change. And I think that's because I was so deeply conditioned in what I was doing that I couldn't have heard it at that time. Like, I was a classical flutist, I was a performer and a teacher, and that's the career path, and I was on it. So it seemed to me that I was doing all the right things.
How did you navigate daily activities when all this stuff was happening to you?
I guess I was really lucky that I was working for myself. My students came to me in my home. I had gigs and other things sporadically. I didn't have to show up to anything every day. And because my students were coming to my home, I could simply just be in my space and do what I needed to do, and then be okay to be on for like 4 or 5 hours, and then retreat and
not have to drive anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. The driving that I had to do sometimes was an issue, and I just did the best I could.
So Angela, you were saying that in this experience, like with your Kundalini, but then also a lot of other transitions that you've taken on, like, what have been some of the most challenging things for you? Like, I know you mentioned that you lost some friends, and of course all of the physical things that were manifesting, but were there any other significant challenges that you had to navigate?
So I think for me, one of the first ones was what it means to be grounded and have boundaries. And that's where the Camino de Santiago came in a super potent way. And I now understand exactly why I needed to go do that. I was not a super grounded person at all. And as I've done more and more deep work in the years since all of this, I understand that I grew up in an environment where there weren't really clear boundaries. And so I didn't even know what that meant. And so having all of this happen, and then finding myself with a backpack that weighed 50 pounds, walking straight for 500 miles across the country, it took 40 days. And I learned exactly what it meant to be grounded. And up until that time, I thought that was actually something that sounded like a terrible idea. Like, why would I want to be grounded? Why wouldn't I want to float all the time?
Right.
And I started to really realize that to be fully present in this world in my own life is actually the most important part of navigating a spiritual path. And coming to really be fully responsible for the day-to-day operations of my existence, and to choose like a loving relationship with this body, this being that I'm living as in this lifetime. I wasn't there, like I was kind of, I would guess I would say to some degree a little dissociative and a little escapist, even in my daily existence. And I had a huge addiction to sugar that took me years and years to finally shake. And so that was super important, like learning to be in the moment and to feel all of what was arising, and not try to avoid it and be in some happy place instead, because it felt safer, to learn to really process everything as it was arising, and to process all the things that I hadn't been willing to process before. And so when I walked the Camino de Santiago, I walked 500 miles in 40 days, and I wept uncontrollably for at least part of 35 of those days.
Really?
And I had no idea why. And I would literally be walking with my pack, walking along, and I would be telling myself, the sun isn't that hot. I have plenty of water and food. I'm not in pain. My feet are okay. I don't feel anything that's terrible. And so why can't I stop crying? And it was this profound opening for me to process a lot of things that had been stifled throughout my life. What a gift that was. And that, of course, directed me forward in my journey into other things that have helped me to do that work.
And to process those things, were you getting clarity on what those were, Angela? Or was it just releasing of, you knew that the crying was about something, but you didn't necessarily connect what it was about? Is that
exactly? Yeah. And I was walking alone a lot of the time, so I guess I felt like I could. I didn't have to worry about other people wondering, like, why is she crying constantly? Are you okay? Like,
right.
Because I couldn't name it. I couldn't say, oh, I'm crying because my feet hurt, or I'm crying because this is really hard. It was really hard to name that, yes, but it was just this deep emotional release that I had never been open enough to allow. And being exhausted and being in this completely different environment, being intentional on a spiritual quest, like, cracked me open. But I think if I hadn't had that Kundalini awakening first, then I would have still been too close down to even allow this other stuff to unfold.
Yes, sure.
So it wouldn't have happened.
Right. Of course. Wow. I mean, that's an incredible experience and to go through after you had this Kundalini awakening, and then you go through this walk on the Camino. And so what occurred from there, Angela? Like with whatever came up and was released as part of that walk? Like, I'm really curious to know, like, how did you then like go home and integrate back into your life?
So I landed home after being away for 7 weeks and was picked up at the airport by two of my dear friends. And they took me back to my friend lived in the apartment next to mine in the same house. And so she took me back to her house, and they'd been cooking, and they had a welcome home meal for me. And just watching them moving around the space, I was like, oh my God, I don't even know how to quantify that. But I realized that I had learned this deep efficiency in the way that I was navigating through space physically and emotionally that didn't resonate anymore with what was in front of me. And so I spent quite some weeks like kind of reeling, and I like dropped right back into my work, so I was busy right away. But I didn't really know what to do, and I started writing. And I'd always been a journaler, but I started writing and writing and writing and writing, and I realized that I was actually deeply longing to pursue writing in a serious way. And so I managed to get enrolled at Goddard College in Vermont, which is one of the most progressive institutions I've yet found for allowing you to study things at the master's level in a really unconventional way. And so I started a program that let me study pilgrimage and consciousness through the process of writing. And that helped me to create more journeys that I would go on as field work, where I would be doing the same thing. And that's what led me to Peru for the first time. And it took me to different places around the world, where I would literally study what is the tradition of pilgrimage in this place, what is the sacred culture of this place, and how do I fit into that? Like, what is my experience in exposure to that, and reflecting on it and being immersed in it. And so over the course of 2.5 years, I studied it in a really deep intellectual way and a really deep personal experiential way. And I had amazing advisors that were not like regular university advisors that said, yes, study all of the stuff, like write research, and don't leave yourself out of it. Like study you, give yourself a voice. And so I completed this whole master's degree while traveling all over the world, studying the consciousness transformation that happens while journeying, and using myself as the number one like case study. And I just want to name that the amazing woman, Margot McLeod, who is the program director, is in hospice right now. And so I am just really honoring the gift that she gave me through inviting me to be in this process in her program.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah, prayers to her for sure on her journey. Yeah. And so, Angela, what would you say have been some of the most rewarding aspects of this experience for you? At least what you've shared with us so far. I'm sure there's a lot more.
So I grew up in Appalachia, in East Tennessee, in a place that was very conservative and very Protestant Christian, dogmatic, evangelical in approach. And I fled that as early as possible, but I didn't really go into my own spiritual journey readily, very quickly. And all of these things pulled me back in the direction of spirit, which I think I'd been called to since I was a child anyway, and helped me to see in a much bigger way what that journey could look like. And without it being based in belief, based in dogma or doing the right thing, all of these experiences, including my amazing master's program, helped me to like be in the process of direct experience of the spiritual journey. And and to allow it to unfold in a way that was organic and natural, as opposed to like, this is the way it is, and this is the way it is not, and if you're not following that, you're going to hell. Which never landed with me. Never.
So you really like the direction and the, like, you're creating from your inner truth is what I get from, you know, creating that for yourself rather than taking on somebody else's belief systems, which I love. That resonates so much with me too. in everything, you know, like certain studies of different things, you know, a lot of people think it's so important to have a traditional person there teaching you ways and different things. And I think, well, I don't want to take on any more of somebody else's dogma. I want to like really connect myself and receive the teachings myself from the teacher, you know, from the source.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And that brings me to where I landed as I finished my master's degree. When I finished my master's degree, I had written this like equivalent of like 3 books worth of writing that came to the conclusion that in the 21st century in the Western world, where we're not bound by cultural dictates and religious dictates, we're free to explore and experience whatever calls in the name of spiritual growth and spiritual unfolding. And so I was finally in a place where I said, okay, I'm good. I don't have to have a path or a tradition that I'm a part of. And then there was a major earthquake in Peru, just south of Lima, in a place where I had spent some time. And I was really devastated by that. And I decided that I was going to go back to Peru. That would have been my second trip to Peru. In order to do some volunteer work to really help to rehabilitate a community that had touched my heart. And then I got the very, very clear message that I needed to go to the Sacred Valley of Peru and drink ayahuasca. And I had uncovered a lot of research and stories about that in my grad school studies. But I thought, no, that's not for me. I'm never going to do that in my life. No, thank you. And I then got this call. You're going to go and you're going to volunteer, and then you're going to go to the Sacred Valley and you're going to drink this medicine. And I thought, really? Voice, where are you coming from? But I knew it was the same voice that had been calling me all along. And I said, okay. And so I did that, and I showed up for that first ceremony, and I was terrified, and I had never done anything like that before. And I even thought, right up until the moment when the cup was in my hands, I could leave. I'm sick of this. And then I sat in that ceremony, and it was like so obviously the natural next step in my life. And it helped me to see the ideas that I had about interconnectedness with all beings and with life and with the world around me. And I had the direct experience of that. And I thought, having direct experience is different than believing. And that was already such a huge part of where I had come, that it felt really aligned. And in that ceremony, the music that I experienced was so amazing. And not at all like what I was doing as a classical musician. And I found myself in the ceremony singing along, singing harmony with songs that I'd never heard before. And I was literally observing my body singing things that I didn't even know. And I was like, whoa, what's happening here?
Powerful.
And and the revelation came that I had been living from the shoulders up in my music career for all of these years. And that what I was experiencing in that circle was what music was really about, like music of the heart, music of like really awakening others and awakening oneself. And I drank it in like divine nectar, like nothing I'd ever touched before. And I came home from that trip and graduated from graduate school and proceeded to listen to nothing but medicine songs and Icaros for a period of 6 months. While I was saving the money to go back to Peru. And I knew at that point that I had found the teacher, like medicine being the teacher. And I have been traveling back to the Sacred Valley and to the Amazon to do that work ever since. And it's been really instrumental in ushering forth the next stage of everything in my life. Like my music path completely changed. 9 months after that first ceremony, I walked away from my manager and all of the other work that I was doing, performing wise at least. I kept my students. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to be a musician anymore. I can't keep showing up to something that feels like this intellectual game and pleasing others, like doing what they expect me to do. And yeah, I remember going to gigs in that 9 months, and I would stand there on stage in my like black formal clothes and my high heeled shoes, and I would play with my pianist this repertoire that I'd been learning for my whole life, and it would sound beautiful, and I would be thinking about like, what is quicker through home, and I wonder if I had the ingredients to make my favorite soup tonight, and like mental noise. And I thought, gosh, I really am not being true to what I signed up for all those years ago in this journey. If I'm going to be a musician and an artist, then I need to really listen inside of myself and hear what that is going to look like now, because what I'm doing right now, I'm just showing up, and that's no different than clocking a card at a day job that doesn't land.
Yes,
and I didn't want that. And kirtan came into my life, and I started going to kirtans, and I would let myself sing a little bit, but I was super blocked around singing. Like I didn't believe that I, as a trained flutist, had any business singing, because that's the classical training mind. You do what you're good at, you do what you're trained to do, and you avoid the rest and let the professionals take care of it. And I would go to those kirtans, and I would sing harmony, and I would love it. And then I would get overwhelmed and pull out my flute and play and be comfortable. And other people would be like, "Oh my God, thank you!" And I realized I was hiding behind it. And so at some point, I started getting asked to do like the response singing for kirtan, and I said okay to that. And then I remember sitting in a ceremony in 2010. And I got the very, very clear message. I'd been praying for months, like for Spirit, please just tell me what I came to this life to do. Like I wanted to know, I knew what my divine purpose was not. And I didn't know what my divine purpose was. And I said, please just show me, and I will show up every day for the rest of my life and do that.
Beautiful.
And I sat in actually a series of ceremonies on a retreat, and I saw my whole questioning process unraveled, and my doubt in my life, and my doubt in spirit, and my doubt in everything. And look at this question, like, what are you trying to find the answer to? Just show up and live into your experience. And I finally said, okay, I surrender. Like, I'm just going to not even ask the question again. And then the message came, okay, now you're ready to know the answer.
Yeah, right. So much power in surrendering.
Yeah. And the answer was, you're here to be a song keeper and to receive your own songs to use for healing, and to learn the songs of others to use for healing. And get ready to show up for that. And it scared the utter shit out of me, because really singing, but I kept trusting, and I kept showing up into the places where it was uncomfortable. And I think that the work that I had done that far in my life with getting out of my head and getting out of my self-definition and getting away from other people's approval and just being honest in myself helped me to have the courage to stand up. And like just a few months after that message came through, I sang in public for the first time as a part of an event. And then it's just continued unfolding ever since. And now, like, that's what I do.
Well, I have to say deep gratitude to the medicine and to Spirit and to you, Angela, for embracing that, because you truly have a very beautiful voice, and and your music is amazing. So I'm so grateful that you're sharing that with all of us.
Thank you.
You know? And I mean, I've sat in ceremony with you playing, and it's just really amazing to feel the resonance coming from you in that space. And yeah, it's just so beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm just grateful to the people I met in Peru who supported me in that, and who said, yeah, bring it on. And even when I was nervous and hesitant, that community has really been instrumental in helping me to fully step into who I am.
Yes, I know. I appreciate that, because that's been my experience as well. And
totally.
Yeah. So speaking of that, who would you say are would you like to share about some of the people that have been really instrumental on your journey? I know you mentioned a couple from the classical music world. Are there any others that have really had a powerful influence?
I've been thinking about this a lot in the last week, actually, because my main flute teacher from my days in music school passed away at age 96. And his name was Bob Willoughby, and he is considered one of the greatest flutists of our time, and one of the greatest teachers of our time. And having some deep reflection this week about his role in my life when I was young and in a really formative place, I realized that he taught me what it was to always be encouraging first, to always listen for what is right before you listen for what is wrong, and to always lift people up. And so that has stayed with me all these years, and I'm so grateful to his place in my life early on. As life unfolded, of course, I already mentioned my dear friend Lynn, who is still one of my absolute beloveds in my life. And then in Peru, the two people who have had, I guess, the strongest impact on my life through the healing work are Diego Palma and Javier Reguero, both of whom I have spent a lot of time with and gone through some very dark spaces with. And I think what I appreciate so much about Diego is he is just so encouraging and so and so dedicated to lifting people up and encouraging them to follow what's in their heart fully. And I heard his messages of that very early in my path before I even really understood what that meant. And so that is so amazing. And Javier, also leading the medicine work, has been really a gift in having courage and going into the shadows and not avoiding that, and noticing when you're avoiding that. And so I have deep appreciation for both of them, and consider them both dear friends and people I have immense respect for. And I think the last person that I would name in this moment is the love of my life, Helen, who also has followed this path for a very long time through her own dark nights of the soul, and who walks hand in hand with me in this journey of awakening and being dedicated to listening to the voice of spirit and moving from that in all things. And her love and her kindness and compassion and grace are so beautiful, and her devotion to being a really positive, loving influence in this world is something that inspires me every single day of my life. And
what are some of the practices that you take on these days that help you to or support you in maintaining where you're at and also to continue your expansion?
That's a great question. I've been doing a lot of mantra meditation over many years, but in the last year, I made a really deep commitment to maintaining that practice on a regular basis. So I try to do it every single day. And the mantra that I work with is the one that I was gifted by Amma, the hugging saint. And so I really feel strongly about calling in connection with her energy, and also like fortifying myself by making the time to be with that every single day. And the other practice that has really become an anchor for me is ancestral work. My father died at the end of 2016, and that was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever been through. And he was my best friend, and I would never have been ready for him to go, and it was his time. But being in relationship with that process really awakened me to the need to be involved with clearing and healing my own ancestral lines, and being in relationship with my ancestors. And so now it's a daily practice. Like every night before I go to sleep, I do writing, and I ask direct questions to these guides that I have a relationship with. And I really take the time each day to like listen there and to invite their wisdom and their guidance. And like just last night, like I spent a lot of time this past weekend doing facilitating of things, and I found myself yesterday with like a headache and feeling kind of like wobbly, and I sat with my guides and I asked them like, can you help me to like stabilize this and help me to understand what I can do in the future to kind of balance? And they just were guiding me in an energetic practice of literally like reeling back in my energy. And these kind of teachings, like I receive regularly from my people now, and that's really beneficial and really useful. So I feel like I have a relationship now with these guides, and they're actually guides that have been coming to me for over a decade in healing work that I didn't even know.
How do they come to you, Angela? Like, do they come to you like that voice you were saying before that's come to you many times? Or do you see them? Or like, yeah, I'd really be curious to know how that occurs for you.
Sure. Through the process of ancestral healing that I have been learning and now facilitate, there's a process by which you heal the ancestral lines by making direct contact with a guide. And so through that process for me took about a year. And I have worked with 8 of my ancestral lineages in that. And so each lineage has taken for me anywhere between 2 weeks and several months to heal. And being in contact with the guide is just something I can drop into now. Like I don't need to do anything. I can literally just say, all right, what do you think about this? And then I get answers. Like I don't have visions all the time. Sometimes I do. Like I went to a float tank and I had 90 minutes of crazy ancestral visions that were guiding me, and it was amazing. But
yeah,
honestly, it's literally just like having this conversation now. Like
it's that clear to you.
Yeah. And and I can ask any of the individual guides or any of the individual lineages to offer their perspective on something, or I can just ask them as a counsel, what do you think? And you know, I'm a person that is like fairly rooted in skepticism and like practical mindedness and things like that. And so if somebody had told me even a couple of years ago this would be my lived experience, I would have thought, I don't know about that. But it is my lived experience now, and I feel like I have the same degree of relationship with these guides that I have with like living beings. And so I'm really grateful. Like and so being with them every day and meditating with them every day. And sometimes they ask me to do ritual offerings and certain practices. That keeps me in connection with spirit even when life is full and I might tend not to otherwise.
Right. Well, that's so powerful to have that really clear connection. You know, I mean, I know for myself, there's many times where I want answers to things. And so I pray and I put it out there, but I never hear anything back, you know? I mean, I think things show up and because I am aware, I'm like, oh, okay, that could be the answer to my question, but it's not necessarily like clear as say someone talking directly to me.
Yeah.
There's not the confidence I wouldn't say that I have that's a message and not just like my mind or my imagination making it up, right?
Yeah. So, as I work with clients in this work now, a lot of people struggle with that. And I think I had already done so much spirit work by the time I started this that I was accustomed to saying, all right, this is just skepticism and you go over here and we're going to keep going. But a lot of people are like, how do I know I'm not just making this up? And it's like, well, are you making it up or is it coming from somewhere else? Like, like, are you taking the time to invent it? And so I just personally don't worry about it. I move on faith.
Yeah. And do you ever, I don't know if you've ever studied any of the Ho'oponopono, this Hawaiian healing method, Ho'oponopono. But I often think about that, like, and for me, the premise of that healing is like, you've got to go within and work on your own stuff. And that is going to change what's happening outside of you. Do you find, because you've been doing all this like ancestral work, like you said, for the last year and a half, has your, just in doing that work alone, have you found like your external world has actually shifted? Have you noticed any change like that happen?
I have. Not in relationship with what I went in for, which was to bring peace and harmony in my own blood family. That hasn't changed. But in the ways that I'm showing up in the world, in a lot of other ways, yes. And I feel like it's actually charged me up even more to want to take a stand for injustice. And like in my own ancestral lines, I've worked with 8 lineages, my 4 grandparent lines, and then 4 other great grandparent lines. And I am both Native American, both Pamunkey and Cherokee. Am also a settler and colonizer, like from England and France and Scotland and Wales. And so in really taking the time to go within myself and to feel what it feels like to be both of those things, what it feels like to be the minority and the ones who were driven out and harmed, and the ones who were seeking a new way and didn't know any better and followed the path of entitlement to just take what they saw as theirs. Like, these are things that I want to be in greater balance in the world. And so it feels to me like something that that is really strong in my awareness right now, that I want to take a stand for justice and for appreciating all of the abundance of ways on this planet, and to be in deep respect for the ones that are not the dominant culture, to protect them and to honor them. And I'm just excited to see how that continues to unfold, because, you know, I feel like I've spent the last 20 something years of my life sitting in a circle facing inward. And this is the circle of alchemy and the circle of change that has really brought me so much healing. And the image that started coming to me like about a year ago was, now the circle needs to turn and face outward, so that we're leaning into each other's backs. We still have each other as the same circle of healing, but now we go out into the world and we become change agents.
Right.
And really show up in the ways that we can to help make a difference in ways that are grounded and direct and in the world. It's not always easy for people on the spiritual path to go there.
Yes,
but
of course.
In 2014, Helen and I had been living south of DC, like right in the thick of things. And after we were married, we got the message that we were supposed to move out and live in nature. And we put a triangle on the map between 3 places that were still close enough to DC to be engaged and far enough out to be able to like lay belly down on the ground and be in silence. And that's how we found the place where we are now. And so we're on the top of a mountain in the Shenandoah River Valley in West Virginia, which is not at all a progressive or abundant place. And we have this beautiful piece of land that we're living on, surrounded by the most magnificent like life every day. It's all virgin forest and giant stones and sky, and we have a view that looks like a postcard. And we haven't had a whole lot of community here. We need to drive 90 minutes to be in community. And we've been really working over these past 3.5 years to build people from DC and surrounding areas in coming to us. And so we have a sanctuary space here. We have a medicine wheel on our land. We have ceremonial fire circle on our land. And we hold more and more sacred events here that give people the opportunity to come and have direct connection with nature, to be in different kinds of ceremonies and rituals. We do workshops. We do all different kinds of gatherings. We actually lead the Sacro ceremonies from the Andean tradition at least once a month. And we've been really seeking to build community around all of these practices. And out this way, like if you're not a part of a traditional Christian church or a parent with kids in a school system, there's no way to connect. It just doesn't happen. And so we are feeling more and more committed to staying here now, because it does meet our soul needs in such a profound way. And there's been enough growth in the time that we've been here that we can see that there's a longing for people to find something that is not those other things. People come to our house and we're like, I live down the street. I had no idea you were doing this. You're here? Why are you here? And we're like, we're here because look at this place. We get to be with the trees all the time. So I agree with you. Like, we go to places like PSAC to like to rejuvenate ourselves and to really like connect in with like the mothership energy. And then we go back to all of our little points on the map. Or like, to me, I see it like a spider web. You know, it's like the points on the web where they connect. That we are that shining point of light that is available for others who are called to come and be together and to be in community. And I think it's through that we are able to make change in the communities where we are. And I'm just starting to see that here. And West Virginia is a state with a lot of poverty and a state with a lot of people who politically are voting against their own best interests. And it's shocking and like deeply sad to watch. And and also like knowing that as those of us who are deeply committed to the preservation of the land and of making more opportunities available to people who are here, and to creating more of a stable economy that is not just based on raping the earth. Like maybe just maybe we'll be creating things that like transform this place. Maybe it'll be far beyond my lifetime, and I'm okay with that.
Beautiful. Any final offerings, Angela, that you'd like to share with the people watching today?
Well, I'm really excited that in a week from tomorrow, I will be boarding a plane to Costa Rica for our upcoming Heart of the Mother retreat. And we do these retreats about once a year. We take people, mostly we've been going to Peru, but this year we decided to go to Costa Rica to take a deep transformational process and connecting with the plant medicine traditions and also different kinds of shamanic and energy healing and the healing presence of the land itself. So we have a group of people from all over that are coming together to join us for that. So I'm super excited. And if people are interested, you can check out our retreats at heartofthemotherretreats.com.
Beautiful.
And the other thing that I'm just super excited about is bringing people into more direct contact with their own ancestors. And this is work that I've been offering just in the last couple of months now, and but have been so deeply dedicated to it for a while now, and studying it with the intention of bringing it to others. And so I'm super excited to watch people light up when they get a whole lot of information on their own people that they couldn't even have imagined making up, and just watching that start to direct their lives. You know, having a daily relationship with a guide that is in your own lineage, that is also in your DNA, is a pretty powerful thing. So
just for clarification on that process, Angela, is that, can you say, is that like a channeling that you do, or is it helping them to connect with their own ability to channel?
The second thing. And that's why I love it. Like, I feel like so much of what I do in my work is about empowering others in their own capacities and to trust themselves. And this ancestral work, it's done in one-on-one sessions, actually just like this, using Zoom mostly. And I simply facilitate a process that guides them into connection with their own really good ancestors, so that healing can happen in the places where it's not so good. And I find that almost everyone has ancestral issues because we don't really take care of that stuff in Western culture. It hasn't been dealt with in a really long time, since most of our cultures were, like, I guess, pre-Christian, pre-modern religion. And so helping people to come into that contact, to have their own revelations and to make their own relationships, that lights me up. And it's empowering to them, because that, I feel like that's really the message of this time in all the work that I'm doing. Like, I am here to facilitate others into trusting their own guidance and their own path and their own process, so that they can do the same thing for somebody else. Then we all change the world faster into this place that is, there's less war, there's less conflict, there's less environmental damage, there's less unconsciousness. That's the goal anyway.
Of course, yeah. And I love that. I'm so aligned with that too, about being your own guru, like in yourself, the truth for you, and for people to just really, truly be able to connect with that and trust it. And expression of that. So thank you so much, Angela, for your sharing today, and all the work that you're doing in the world and the difference you're making. I really appreciate it so much. So thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And thank you for the bright light that you are in your community and in this virtual community too. It's so awesome to be inviting others to share their own stories of empowerment and opening, because I believe that there's a lot of people going through the same thing, and they just don't even know that this is happening, and that this is actually not an isolated event. So
right. Of course. Yeah.
I really honor you and this amazing work that you're bringing to the world. Thank you so much for it.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you.